Hello everybody, the Harrowstorm patch has dropped on the PTS and we have gotten a fresh set of patch notes to go with it. Now the PTS is not live yet, so I haven't been able to get on it, but we have got a peek at what we're going to be seeing class change and balance wise in this coming patch. So in this video we're just going to go over that and we're going to talk about these different changes. There are also some updates on the performance fixes for this patch. This is the big boy that removes 30 GB of spaghetti from this game. So yeah, we'll see how much better the game runs after this update. Let's jump into it. There have been some big changes to block. They have essentially reworked how block worked server side. It should feel the same to use is the big thing that they're getting at. But yeah, all of this is just them saying we've reworked it so it should work better on the server, essentially causing less lags, less desyncs, etc. Now, they did say something here. Activating block while animating an ability or attack will now blend the animation more fluidly instead of completely obfuscating the attack. I'm understanding this as animation canceling will look a little bit more appealing now. Again, we'll have to get on the PTS to see, but this could be huge for the aesthetic appeal of high-level combat in this game because it might look better. A big change to Thorn's damage, which is the damage return mechanic. It now has a 7-meter range on its effect rather than infinite range. This is going to be a huge thing, especially for things like Dragon Knight, which have the spike bone armor damage return. Probably the most common Thorn's damage we see. Fixed an issue where leap and charge abilities could not be cast while immobilized. I assume that this is for things like ambush that are supposed to be able to be used while immobilized. Leap, taking your feet off the ground again. I think in the past it did break immobilize as well. And then there were some changes to off balance that I do really like. It now lasts for 7 seconds from player-sourced abilities and sets, which is the same as it was in PvP before. Off balance is no longer reapplied to the target every 15 seconds since the original off balance ends. Off balance is no longer consumed by the heavy attack or by abilities. This is really awesome because if you get that off balance stun in PvP, you now retain that additional 10% damage bonus to follow up that nasty stun combo. This is going to make that off balance stun even better in PvP, and I'm okay with that because this is one of, if not the highest level stun that you can use, and then you can really get some crazy kills with it. But it of course requires you to pay a lot of attention and time your heavy attacks really well. Major minor heroism will no longer be active while you're not in combat. And there have been some changes to Battlegrounds. You can now only queue as a solo player into Battlegrounds, so there will be no pre-made teams. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So we'll see how that goes. That's really the big one. There's no pre-made teams because of MMR. You know, you're going to be put in with other higher ranked players or people who have played as often. But yeah, love to hear your guys' thoughts on that one too. So we're quickly going to skim over the performance improvements. This is something that we'll really get to see the impact of when we test it on the PTS, but the full impact on that live server. So we'll have to do some testing for this, but they have basically optimized the multi-threading implementation to improve performance in situations with lots of effects, i.e. things like Cyrodiil, optimize specific processes that could cause spikes in resource usage and cause FPS drops. Again, this is going to be huge, especially for Cyrodiil. They parallelized the fixture update process, allowing them to utilize multiple cores to improve overall performance of the game client. Multiple cores is going to be such a huge deal. And then they added additional optimizations, including the following: parallelized terrain loading, optimized the tutorial GUI, optimized the compass pins, and miscellaneous function improvements. In short, we should see better performance all around with this new patch. They're taking 30 gigabytes of data out of this game that essentially didn't need to be there. And or they rewrote it and they replaced it with something better. So yeah, this is a really huge update for performance. Like I said, I'm really excited to see what it's like, but the real test is going to be on that live server. Taking a look at the Necromancer Changes, they have got some big reworks to Blast Bones, so hopefully Blast Bones will be working better. So the Blast Bones will now last for 6 seconds rather than 5, giving it a little bit more time to hit that target. This could be an issue because when Blast Bones does get stuck, you have to wait that full duration before you can use it again, which can hurt you. The Skeletal Mage and Spirit Mender and their morphs will now last for 10 seconds rather than 5. This is going to be interesting to see how this works based on the cost of these abilities, etc. Because 10 seconds is, yeah, not a lot of base duration on those. But they do go up when you morph them, so we'll have to see how the morphs look on the PTS. Improve the targeting areas for all tethers that they will now link to the closest target. That's a big deal. The tether targeting was a bit of an issue, but it was patched up since the release of Necromancer, I believe, in the Dragonhold patch. So yeah, they're touching it up even more, which is awesome. The Gravelord Blastbones ability, the skeleton from this ability and its morphs will now attempt to leap from 28 meters after a short delay rather than 15. This should make Blastbones work a lot better in PvP, especially with movement involved, people running away, going in and out of the distance of Blastbones. Hopefully it can pick up and target its opponent better, and it is more predictable offensively and defensively to deal with the Blastbones. And of course, they increase the speed in which the skeleton jumps too, so this should help it target its target more effectively. Boneyard, they reduce the cost of this ability to 3,780, down from almost 5k. All of the AoE damage over time abilities had a similar treatment like this. Bone Tyrant, the Bitter Harvest, Dead and Pain, they fixed an issue where this was not stacking with the Yorville Guidance set, so now you can use that set for that major protection, which is really nice. And then the rest are just fixes here for the Necromancer, no big changes. And then for the Dragonite changes, Dragon Leap has had some changes, but the damage is going to stay the same. However, the overall time that you're in the air has been increased regardless of the distance that you are from your target. So if you're right on top of the target, I assume this means that you're going to have a bit more hang time before you can dunk them. There were a few fixes to Protective Scale, Molten Armaments, and then Stonefist got some updates to change how it works. It's now a 2-cast ability instead of how it functioned previously. Activating this will now cause you to stomp the earth, causing you to deal damage in an area around you after a short cast time and generate 3 charges of the ability. Activating the ability again allows you to lob one of the earthen spheres around you at an enemy up to 28 meters away to damage them. The base ability no longer has the stagger mechanic, but the Stone Giant Morph will retain the stagger mechanic. The final hit will also stun the enemy upon dealing damage. So some big changes to this here. Honestly, we'll have to see how this plays out. Again, a stun that is not easy to whip out on demand is pretty bad for PvP in my opinion, so we'll have to see how this plays out. I don't think we'll see a lot of people utilizing this in PvP. Nightblade has had some fixes for Consuming Darkness, but no big changes. Sorcerer has had the AoE off of its unstable familiar pet, or the volatile familiar, reduced to 3,510 for the activation ability instead of 4,500. Ball of Lightning has had a fix where it was persisting longer than it should have in certain circumstances. Lightning Splash, they reduced the cost of it to 3,780, again from almost 5k Magicka, just normalizing those AoEs. And then there were a few fixes for Overload when it was dismounting you or not counting towards heavy attacks for sets. Now, Templar, Adric Spear, Spear Shards, again, has had that cost decrease to 3,780 from nearly 5k. Nova has had some negative telegraphs added to it so that if it's an enemy Nova, it's easier to tell, which is kind of nice. Now, this is a big one for Templar. Sacred Ground, the passive no longer snares enemies in the area. Instead, it increases your block mitigation by an additional 10% while standing in one of its mentioned abilities. Very big change. Templar really benefited from the snare because it was very slow. So having the block mitigation now kind of hurts the speed of Templar, which I don't think it needed to take a hit, and makes it bulkier, which again I don't think was a good direction for Templar balance. But hey, we'll see how this plays out. As it sits right now, I don't think this is a good passive. I think the snare is way better and healthier for the game. And then Warden, we've got some fixes to Living Vines, but no big changes. And then Winter's Embrace, Glacial Presence. This passive now also increases your critical damage against enemies and critical healing against allies who have been recently affected with the Chilled Status effect. This is very interesting. I don't know what the value of this is because we're not on the PTS, but again, we'll have to see. This is big for Warden, who's in a pretty good spot right now, and adding those critical damage multipliers off of the Chilled effect. I like that a lot because the Warden can really pop out the Chilled. Very unique kind of class effect that they have real easy access to. So yeah, there we go. I like this. We'll have to see how this plays out. And then the weapon on the bow side, they have fixed up some poison injection issues where it was not proccing sets such as Sheer Venom, which is really nice. The Ballista Rapid Fire Morph will no longer break invisibility, which is really good. And then Volley had the cost reduction to 3,510 from 4,500. Destruction Staff, Wall of Elements, again, got the cost reduction, and there were a few fixes for the Destro Staff, but no big changes past that reduction. And then Dual Wield Blade Cloak had the cost reduction as well to 3,780 stamina. The Restoration Staff, Panacea, and the one-hand mobility also had a little bit of fixes, but no big changes to them. They should just function better. Berserker Strike is the one that got nerfed this patch. Reduce the damage done by this ability and its morphs by 16% to better account for the fact that it also ignores mitigation. Fix an issue where this ability did not grant immunity and snares to immobilize on Berserker Rage. I actually like this. Honestly, Berserker Strike was doing too much damage. With the change to off balance as well, the best way to land a Berserker Strike is with a partial charged heavy to get that off balance stun and then into the Berserker Strike. Because we don't get rid of the off balance off that partial charged heavy, for a lot of people who use this skill effectively in PvP, they will see about a 6% damage cut from it, which is fine. And then after using the Berserker Strike, your damage should be increased, which is really nice too. From where it is right now. So the armor pierce that this offers is kind of the really important bit, and that is being retained. Again, I'm not a fan of the cast time on any of the ultimates. I'm sure that you guys know that. We've been kind of on this train for almost a year now. ZeniMax, just, they want it, even though it's so unhealthy for how this game feels to play. But anyway, there we go. I do kind of like this change, though, especially with the off-balance changes. I feel like this is totally appropriate, and if you're not using those different combinations of outgoing damage and debuff, etc., your Berserker Strike will take a bigger hit, and that's probably for the better. And Dizzy Swing also got some big changes. This will now stun opponents who are already off balance, so essentially 2 Dizzies in a row to get that stun. The cheeky partial charged heavy attack stun is still going to be much more effective than trying to whip out the second Dizzy, so we still retain that high-level aspect to this skill where the high-level player will do better with it, and the low-level player will now still get the stun. Some big changes to the Vampire Drain Essence skill. The stun from this ability and its morph now occurs when the cast completes rather than when it begins. Now, I don't know if this is on the last tick of damage or if you cancel the cast early, it will still stun your opponent. All I can say is that if this is on the last tick and canceling it early does not stun them, then this is going to be a fantastic change for Drain Essence, but it's going to lose essentially an effective stun in PvP. If they make it so you can still cancel it to get the stun out, I like that too because it requires people to cancel the stun when they want to hit you with the Drain stun. We'll have to see how it goes. In my opinion, I think the big issue with Drain Essence was the damage it dealt and the fact that it dealt that amount of damage right away. So we'll see how it goes. Again, we'll get on the PTS to test that out and see how it feels. The Mage's Guild Shooting Star Morph will no longer grant ultimate for hitting corpses. I'm not really sure what that means. Does it mean hitting a live player or not? If so, then there's no point in taking this morph. I think this just could be an issue where it was maybe granting ultimate when it was hitting something dead. In the Psijic Order skill line, the Concentrated Barrier passive is currently not working on the PTS because they're fixing up some of the changes with block. Volendrung has had some changes. They increased the damage of its light attacks by 1725. They increased the damage of one of the attacks, I don't even know what these all do, by 1555. The increased damage of the Malakath's Revenge by 1575. They decreased the damage of the Accursed Charge, which is the Gap Closer, by 1700, and they decreased the damage of the Ruinous Cyclone by 2125 per tick. The big one, I think, is the Cyclone, which was absolutely just crushing Zerg, so the damage reduction there is probably good. And then there were definitely some updates and fixes to make these abilities function a little bit better. There were some cast times added to some abilities, like Malakath's Revenge and Rorken's Rebuke, which is very interesting. These are the non-gap closer abilities, so we'll see how this kind of plays out with Volendrung. As it sits, you don't really defend yourself with Volendrung anyway. You just go in and spam and kill everything around you. So, yeah, I don't think these will have a huge effect. But these were just look kind of like a balance pass through the Volendrung ability, and then they did a few fixes on the Cyclone as well. So that is all of the balance changes and class changes for the patch. I would love to hear what you guys have to think about these changes, so let me know down in the description below. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to check out my breakdown of all of the new sets and changed sets coming with this new update. There's a link to that video down in the description below for you guys, so you can stay informed with all of the changes this update If you enjoyed this and you want to catch some live stuff, you can check me out on Twitch. Give me a follow on Twitter if you want to keep up to date with my shenanigans. Check out my website for fully written guides for builds, as well as a hub for all of my content. We are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first month. If you guys want to give them a shot, down in the description below, there is a link to it. And last but not least, if you guys really love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this job, so thank you guys so much for helping me out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great night, everyone.